Evaluation of Pope as a poet. Paragraph number 1. Introduction. Two views. The evaluation of a poet and his poetry depends essentially on the critic's association with a particular school of thought. There are, of course, various schools of criticism which pursue their own norms and principles in literary appreciation. The so highly significant and diametrically opposed to each other are the Romantic and Classical schools of criticism. The evaluation of Pope as a poet has been highly contentious and controversial if perceived from these two perspectives. Some critics have denied to him the very name of a poet and pronounced him a mere versifier, whereas others have placed him among the high priests of poetry. Paragraph number 2. Romantic and Classic view. Wordsworth and Coleridge, the chief exponents of the Romantic criticism, condemned him as the founder of the mechanical school of poetry and the originator of the artificial diction. Arnold bracketed him with Dryden as the classic of prose in the English literature. Mark Pattison described Pope as an unrivaled rhymer and no more. Walton refuses to acknowledge Pope's compositions as genuine poetry. To him, the sublime and pathetic are the essential features of a great poet which Pope did not have altogether. On the contrary, Johnson, who follows the classical standards, imagines, if Pope be not a poet, whose is poetry to be found? Similarly, Voltaire extolled him with high phrases. Pope is the best poet of England and at present of all the world. And Wilson Knight placed Pope in the same rank as Dante and Shakespeare. Paragraph number 3. Romantic qualities which Pope lacks. If we assess real poetry in terms of such romantic values as imagination, emotions, quest for the unknown, love for the exotic things, preoccupation with obscurities like death, youth, love, innocence, desire to explore what lies outside the human vision, subjectivity, wish for heroic performance, impatient with restraints, revolt against authority, love for natural beauty, non-conformity with traditional view of life, and above all, to regenerate society and usher in utopias on the principles which many people would find difficult to understand and follow. These qualities, which came to be recognized as the high mark in the Romantic poetry, certainly do not exist in Pope's works. The Rape of the Lock is a social satire. The essay on man is essentially moralistic and philosophical. The essay on criticism is a document of critical views on literature. The Dunciad again is a pick of bitter satire against metaphorical dunces. And the pastorals and Windsor Forest lack genuine appreciation of nature. Paragraph number 4. A social poet. Pope is predominantly a social poet. The Romantic ideals seem to have no appeal for him. As Shakespeare is the most outstanding poet dealing with innate human instincts and passions, so is Pope great as the poet of society, the delineator of manners and exposer of those motives which may be called rather social. Pope in his own sphere of interest is undoubtedly matchless. He measures men, manners and women in terms of their social implications. That is why Pope is more concerned with moral and social aspects of his society. Paragraph number 5. Pope's poetry and poetic concept. Pope as a literary man represents precision, graceful expression, objectivity, wit, intellect, reason, balance, proportion, symmetry, and poise. There is in Pope's poetic work a congenial blend of clear thinking and understanding, clarity and accuracy, brevity and blemishlessness, and morality and satire. His lines are so witty, balanced, and poised that most of them have become famous proverbs. Pope had his own concept of poetry. To him, real poetry did not mean the originality of ideas, but the value of form. What it was thought but never so well expressed. To neoclassical poets, expression was more important than the thought. View of social human nature. Paragraph number 6. Pope was interested in nature, but it is the human nature as reflected in social behavior. As to Pope, the proper study of mankind is man. He therefore views social human nature as the most appropriate subject for the expression of his poetic ideas. It is definitely not the nature presumed to be the abode of Olympian gods and goddesses, nor the pantheistic nature of Wordsworth, sensuous nature of Keats, ferocious nature of Byron, and the instinctive nature of Shakespeare. For Pope, nature meant that nature which was rational and was approved by tradition. He, being the poet of society, wanted men to live properly in civilized society, following the rational principles of human conduct. In fact, there are two kinds of poetry. The one which gives us the message of the eternal, it tells us things which are true for all times. The other tells us what the age wishes to hear. Shakespeare, Milton, Wordsworth give us message of the eternal, while Pope gives us what is restricted to his contemporary society. Paragraph number 7. Basic deficiencies. However, Pope is not without some basic deficiencies in his art. He is devoid of the warmth of emotions and flights of imagination. In spite of its nationality, good sense, and intellectual force, it can never claim to be a real and genuine poetry. But a great deal may be allowed to Pope in view of the age in which he lived. But in his own province, he is matchless. He has given the finest expression to the contemporary life in its true colors. He has added more phrases to the English language than any other writer except Shakespeare. If all these achievements make a man poet, Pope is certainly one. Paragraph number 8. Pope's contribution. Thus, it would be inappropriate to say that Pope was not a poet at all. He brought the form of poetry to perfection and thereby made a significant contribution to English poetry. He may not have given new thoughts to the world, but clothed them with form and gave them a vivid and forceful expression. Therein lies a source of the pleasure which we derive from his poetry. His scope was no doubt limited, but within these limits he achieved a lot. He perfected the heroic couplet. His phrases have become current expressions of everyday speech. His poetry may best be with a miniature painting on 2 inches of ivory, which has its own unique value. His poetry is the conventional poetry of the conventional age, but it is poetry all the same. He could say what he wanted to say in the best possible words. There are occasional flashes of real poetry in the description of Syed, which show that he would have been a different man in a different age. We should not judge a writer for what he has not done. We should rather evaluate him on what he has accomplished. Conclusion category. The last paragraph. Paragraph number 9. In conclusion, we can maintain that a pope is judged purely from his standards of a genuine poetry. He certainly falls short of the sublimity associated with Homer, Dante, Shakespeare, Wordsworth, and Iliad. But if we evaluate in the light of classical standards of poetry, he undoubtedly is the great master in his field. He therefore may be compared with those who fall in his category. He cannot be contrasted with those who are of a different perception about life and literature. Thank you.